change that, but I'm sure you'll know that it's me and not Atmananda, it's Jai Shila Das. So we're continuing Bhagavad-gita as it is, chapter, whoops, hold on, chapter 1. That's better than chapter 2. Right there. Hold on, chapter 1, 25. 125, and I'm going to do a few verses this morning. I think we're going to conclude or focus gradually come up to 28. So 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we'll cover those this morning. So we'll chant some invocation prayers before we begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, chapter 1, text number 25. Bhishma Drona Pramukhata Sarvesham Cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Pasyaitan Samavetan Kuruniti. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: in the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all other chieftains of the world, Hrishikesha, the Lord, said, just behold all the Kurus who are assembled here. Purport: as the super soul of all living entities, Lord Krishna could understand what was going on in the mind of Arjuna. The use of the word Hrishikesha in this connection indicates that he knew everything. And the word Partha, or the son of Kunti, or Prita, is also similarly significant in reference to Arjuna. As a friend, he wanted to inform Arjuna that because Arjuna was the son of Prita, the sister of his own father Vasudeva, he had agreed to be the charioteer of Arjuna. Now, what did Krishna mean when he told Arjuna to behold the Kurus? Did Arjuna want to stop there and not fight? Krishna never expected such things from the son of his aunt Prita. The Arjuna was thus predicated by the Lord in friendly joking. So, interesting, the mood of Sakyaras. Om Ganatimarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Grave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. My spiritual master is forcing me to open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge of my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. So we could ask the question, as I was just getting present to those prayers, that how is Srila Prabhupada doing that? He's doing it by referring us to Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and the transcendental literatures offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is the process for all of us to dispel the darkness of ignorance we were born into by constant hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord. And that's how everything can be cleared up. So the mind of Arjuna was thus predicated by the Lord in friendly joking. So Krishna, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning Krishna's name of Hrishikesha, meant that he knew everything of how Arjuna was thinking, and he was in a friendly, joking kind of mood, because after all, they were friends. That was their relation. And Sakyaras, mood of fraternity, of friendship. And he's saying in a behold the Kurus. Is let me just quickly get that. When he told Arjuna to behold the Kurus, did Arjuna want to stop there and not fight? Krishna never expected such things from the son of his aunt Prita. The mind of Arjuna was predicated by the Lord in friendly joking. So it was leading up. Krishna knew that this was leading up to a very pivotal point, a crisis. We're all more or less in crisis. So Arjuna had his crisis. And the whole thing was a crisis, but gradually this was the pinnacle of it, just before the battle. And he was being affected by the environment all around him, and in a mood of, what would we say, Arjuna's mood? Uncertainty, a mood of uncertainty as to exactly how to proceed. Should I just rip into this battle? Exactly what to do. So he was a little unsure, uncertain, yeah, not wanting to just bowl into it like any other fight. This was not any other fight. This was a very, very special fight. So I'm going to go on to 26. Tatra pasyat titan partaha pitrin ata pitamahan acharyan matulan bratrin putran potran shakhims tata shvasuran suridhas chaiva senayor ubayorapi. Translation. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his father-in-law and well-wishers, all present there. Srila Prabhupada's purport. On the battlefield, Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bodhishrava, who were his father's contemporaries, grandfathers Bhishma and Somadatta, teachers like Dronacharya and Kripacharya, maternal uncles like Salya and Shakuni, brothers like Duryodhana, sons like Lakshmana, friends like Ashvatthama, well-wishers like Kritavarma, etc. He could see also the armies which contained many of his friends. Text number 27. Tan samiksha sakunteya sarvan bandhun avashtitan kripaya paraya vishto vishidhan idam abravit. Translation. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. Text number 28. Arjuna vacha drishtve mam svajanam Krishna yuyutsum samupashtitam Shidanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishushati. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Purport. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods. Whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjuna, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends, and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers of the opposite party for seeing their imminent death. And sinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver, and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still one can easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but that he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, Yashyasti bhaktir bhagavata kinchana sarvai gunais tatra samasate suraha harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manoratenasati dhavato bahi. Translation. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up." So as I was mentioning at the beginning, this is the pinnacle of Arjuna's crisis. The whole thing has been brewing for 13 years, and all the peace consultations have been fruitless. Dhritarashtra is hell-bent on it's trying to satisfy Duryodhana and his party, who are envious of the Lord and envious of their cousin brother Yudhisthira and all of the Pandavas. And here it is about to begin the war between the different parts of the Kuru dynasty. So unprecedented. It's very an amazing thing. And again, talking is one thing, doing is another. So there's talk of the battle, but now it's actually going to happen. And when Arjuna sees this, again, we can understand the hand of the Lord and all of this is there. And so Arjuna is acting out his role, and he's acting in a very special way. And Prabhupada is highlighting that this was not due to weakness, but it was due to his soft-heartedness. I'm trying to see if we can pick that up again. Where did we say that? So all the good qualities are held by Arjuna, the godly persons. Further on in Bhagavad-gita, the divine and demoniac natures are described, and Arjuna is eulogized by the Lord, saying that you have nothing to fear, that actually you have divine qualities. That's in the 17th chapter, I think it is, or 16th chapter. 16th chapter. The Blessed Lord said, and he lists different qualities of divine qualities: fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity and simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion and freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty and steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, freedom from envy, and the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharat, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. And Prabhupada explains them all very elaborately in 6 or 7 pages of a purport, going through all these different qualities. And then he explains the opposite qualities in a shorter way: arrogance, pride, anger, conceit, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Prita. The transcendental qualities in the next verse are conducive to liberation, whereas the demonic qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born of the divine qualities. So Krishna is pointing that out. In this world, he goes on to say, there are 2 kinds of created beings, Krishna says. One is called divine and the other demonic. So Arjuna's manifestation of these different qualities of compassion were due to his soft-hearted nature as being a pure devotee of the Lord. He was sympathetic in the beginning to his soldiers, but even when he foresaw their imminent death of the opposite side, he became overwhelmed by compassion. And he was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. And the verse that's given here is an interesting verse of the Bhagavatam. Yashasti bhaktir bhagavata kinchana sarvai gunais tatra samasate suraha harava bhaktasya. Srila Prabhupada quote this verse often from that 3rd line. Harava bhaktasya, abhaktasya means a non-devotee. Abhaktasya is there, and abhaktasya is a non-devotee of the Lord. Hari. Harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna. Kuto mahadguna means what are the good qualities in one who is not a bhakta. And Prabhupada's different translations are given there, but Prabhupada in this purport, he translates it to say, one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. So in other places it said they have no value. And here it's saying they're of little value. And why are they of little value? Someone may have different qualities. This is because, Srila Prabhupada goes on to say, he is hovering on the mental plane. He's not governed by the principles of religion and Shastra and Guru and sadhus, not guided in that way, but on the mental platform, considering what is good and what is bad. One person will have one concept, somebody else will have another concept of what is good, what is bad, what is to be done, what is not to be done. So on the mental platform, then Prabhupada goes on and says, certain entity by the glaring material energy. And to some extent, we can say that this is Arjuna's situation. And again, this is the dilemma or the crisis that we will all find ourselves in at different stages in life. And Arjuna exemplifies that, being drawn into the circumstances of one's life situation. Because it's like that. One is, we're hearing here that Arjuna is surrounded at this point by grandfathers and fathers and intimate relatives, and he's overwhelmed in this way. So Krishna is going to go on. It's hard not to go forward into what Krishna says. We know and it will come up later in the 2nd chapter when Krishna begins to instruct Arjuna. Just now, Arjuna is described. He hasn't surrendered. There's still the mood of fraternity. He's asking Krishna, instructing Krishna, please take the chariot here. Who is desiring to fight at this time? So they're still on this mood of friendship. So he's enacting his role as Arjuna's friend, as his chariot driver, and obeying the instructions. And it's only later when Krishna, when Arjuna says to Krishna that Asochan and Vasochas from Prajna Bharat Sarvasa say Gatasum Agatasum Sya Nanu Suchandi Pandita. I'm trying to remember these slokas. I don't think I got that one right. I think it's the wrong sloka. Anyway, Krishna, let's use English if we can use that. Arjuna says, now I'm bewildered. No, I want to become your disciple. I'm surrendering unto you. Please instruct me. And then the mood shifts. That's the second chapter, the text, whatever it is, 7, I think. Let's look at it. Let's look at it. Why not? Why not? Let's just quickly look at it so that we get Krishna instead of my bumbling attempts. 2, and it should be around 7, I think it is. 2, 7. Karpanya doshopahatas vabhava prichami tvam dharma samudda chetaha yat shrehatyan nistitam bruhitan me sisyastiham sadimam tvam prapanam. So eventually we get to the point where Arjuna says, I'm now confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of weakness in this condition. So this is, there is being stated as weakness. Here, Srila Prabhupada is saying, yes, but it's also showing his compassionate nature as a pure devotee of the Lord. And a pure devotee has that compassion. But Arjuna's finally, and Krishna is going to explain that to Arjuna. It's nice that you're compassionate. It's nice that you're gentle. It's nice that you're kind. It's nice that you don't want to create havoc in the world. But guess what? It's not you that's caused this. It's another party. And now your duty is to uphold the principles of religion. We have done everything, and now it's time for you to fight. That is what you have to do. And Arjuna's, again, it was, we'll hear, he's bewildered by the whole thing and overwhelmed with compassion. And only when he comes to this place where he says, and now his condition, lost all composure due to weakness. He's seeing that this is a weakness. Gradually, Krishna explains everything so that he realizes this is a weakness, but I'm still very much overwhelmed by all this stuff that's happening. Does it sound familiar? Again, this is our learning platform. So we can be in Krishna consciousness. Our life situation changes, some dramatic thing, some gradual thing changes. It's always changing, the shifting sands of time. So this is the world, the material world. Everything changes. Everything is temporary, manifested. And just as we think everything is okay, whammo, something goes wrong. And again, we're challenged. And we're challenged to see how deep our Krishna consciousness is. Will we be able to put everything in its proper perspective and to see it in a Krishna conscious manner? Now, what does that mean in a Krishna conscious manner? It means to be able to see many, many facets of something and to understand how to proceed and to keep Krishna firmly at the center. And that is not always easy. So it is a great science. And so therefore, to learn this science, eventually Arjuna gets to the point that I want to surrender, and I don't want to give you more ideas. How can we fight against these persons that will create great unwanted progeny? The woman will be unprotected, the leaders will be killed. You get very nice arguments, absolutely, and befitting such an exalted person as Arjuna, a great Rajarishi, a great saintly king, expected of him. But he needed to update his realizations, and eventually he gets to that point. And that is our position also. We can use a great intelligence or little intelligence. We can our emotions, our feelings, our sense of love, our sense of all the senses and qualities that we have at our disposal. But ultimately, to gain proper understanding, we have to take shelter of Krishna. And this is what Arjuna has to do. And he gets to that point. And then at that point, he says, eventually says, I want you to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I'm confused about my... And again, that's just a little example of what to do, what's the best thing to do. And in a moment, isn't it, we're challenged how to act in all sorts of circumstances and not to offend. Offend some, isn't it? You don't want to offend someone that's calling, you don't exactly know who, and then finally you see who it was and you're thinking that what to do. So this is the way life unfolds. And finally gets to the point. It says, now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me what to do. So then I think it says, and Arjuna goes on a little bit, and eventually Krishna, slightly smiling, begins to advise Arjuna, and he chastises him. He says that's the other verse that I quoted earlier. Asoschan, prajnavajam shabasase, gatasum agatasum cha nanusayanti panditaha. He says, you're speaking like a fool, Arjuna. You're speaking learned words, but the wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So he immediately chastises. Prabhupada uses that word. He chastises in a nice way, but chastises him. You're speaking in so many different ways. So we need the direction of Krishna, and Arjuna was certainly soft-hearted, and going back to these qualities that they're there, and it's a very important verse, that verse that we were just hearing, Yashasti Bhakti Bhagavat Akinchana, one who's unflinching, Bhagavat Akinchana, unflinching faith in an unflinching devotion in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has all the good qualities, Sarvai Gunais Tatra Samasate Sura, of the Sura, the divine qualities. And and those qualities are very exalted qualities. I'll just read also Titikshava Karunika Surida Sarvadehina Ajita Satrava Shanta Sarva Sadhu Bhushana. In the Bhagavatam, it gives some nice qualities. The third canto, 25th chapter, text 21. And then in 20, the text 20, the one before it, it says, every learned man knows very well that attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement of the spirit soul. But that same attachment, when applied to the self-realized devotees, opens the door of liberation. So this is spoken in the third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam Kadama Muni and Devahuti. Every learned person knows very well that attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement for the spirit soul. Ultimately, these personalities he's seeing in the bodily concept of life. And we've been discussing over the last weeks all the arguments of Arjuna, that how can I be happy when everyone that I would wish to enjoy the kingdom of, if I win this war, will be destroyed and I will not be able to enjoy the kingdom. So this is the bodily concept of life. So that attachment is the greatest entanglement of the spirit soul, and one will not act properly or according to what one's duty. But that same attachment, when applied to self-realized devotees, and I'll add, and the Lord, opens the door of liberation. And some of the qualities that are mentioned there, the symptoms of such a person or a sadhu is that he is tolerant. So Arjuna and the Pandavas were showing a lot of tolerance, unbelievable amounts of tolerance, what to speak of Queen Kunti also. Merciful, and here we're hearing of the merciful nature of Arjuna. He was feeling the compassion for not only his own soldiers who would die in the battle, but the other soldiers on the other side. So he was very mercifully thinking, and friendly to all living entities. We know the famous statement that the Pandavas asked for just simply 5 villages. We are Kshatriyas, that is how we must live. That is our guna and karma. So they were very friendly to all living entities, tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies, and he didn't consider himself to be an enemy of the Kauravas and Duryodhana. Certainly Duryodhana considered himself to be an enemy, but the Pandavas didn't. They saw him as the cousin brother, like that. Peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all of his characteristics are sublime. So this is what is available when we transfer our attachment from the material sphere to the spiritual. If we focus on the spiritual divine side, then all the good qualities of the demigods can be assimilated, and gradually one becomes purified, Cheto Darpanam Marjanam, cleansing the mirror of the heart, and then gradually, by that process, all the good qualities of the demigods become manifest as we advance on the path of disentanglement from material life. And the very important point that was being made here, that these material qualifications that one may have are of little value, because ultimately they are just of the material world. One may be, quote unquote, a good person, and quote unquote, again, do good deeds, pious activities, etc. But because it's hovering on the mental plane, ratena, mano ratena. Mano is the mind, and rata is the vehicle or the chariot. So the chariot of the mind. Bhavato bahi, it's external. So the mind's business is not connected to Krishna and divine knowledge, but it's connected to the material energy. And it's unfocused. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekiha kuranandana bahushaka yanantasya buddhayo visayana. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one, O beloved child of the Kurus. Krishna explains this to Arjuna, but the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched, bahushaka. So that's a similar statement to this davato bihi, external. On that manorata, the chariot of the mind, one will be simply connected to the material energy, whether it be goodness, passion, and ignorance. But it's of little value, because whether one takes birth in and whatever position one takes as birth, it's all in the material sphere. So it's of little value, ultimately. Although naturally we will encourage people to live in a pious way instead of an impious way. That's not what we're saying. But in the absolute sense, it is of little value. And unfortunately, generally what happens from that mental platform, Prabhupada says, this is because he's hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring energy. So this, we should not underestimate the power of the glaring material energy, because it is always competition between the modes of material nature. That's very clearly explained in Bhagavad-gita. That one may have a certain situation, but again, as I was saying earlier, it can change. There's so many influences, and we see someone can become quote unquote ruined. Yes, so he may be very well situated in this world, but then there's a collapse of the stock exchange and loses all his wealth, and then he loses his friends because he has no wealth, and then he has to jump off a high building and commit suicide. I mean, that's a very extreme example, but it does happen. And to lesser and greater degrees, these things happen. So we should not trust no future, however it appears. It's padam padam yadvi padam natesham. The devotee, the goal of the devotees is param padam, the supreme abode, the Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. So there's danger on the royal road. One may, yeah. So This is the very important factor, and Duryodhana and company are not focused on this. They're thinking, if only we can get full control of this kingdom, then we'll be happy and we'll be powerful. And that's the demoniac mentality. I've killed this person. I saw this person as my enemy, and I've overcome them, and I'll fight and destroy anybody else. But he doesn't realize that the clock is ticking. The, the sun is rising and setting, and another day is lost. And then we're thinking, if we can prolong our life, that will be very important. Then we can enjoy for longer. But there's a process for doing that. there's processes for everything, sattvic processes to prolong the life. So it's a gradual process. Then you may be born in a place that you can enjoy higher and higher levels of enjoyment, but it requires pious activities. And gradually one could be elevated, and that really is the focus of the Vedic literatures, to gradually elevate people to higher levels of enjoyment in the material world, because that's what they desire. So here's how you do it. So if you follow that, then that will be there. But generally people don't follow it. And then Krishna himself in the second chapter, he says to Arjuna, rise above this, because again, it's of little value taking a high birth, getting all kinds of celestial pleasures in the heaven. It's a phantasmagoria. So yeah, so again, Duryodhana back into that. They're not realizing that they're only going to live for a certain number of years, and gradually you will become old like Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana. If you lived that long, you will get old, you will get diseased, and you will be forced to die. So what is the value? Kim pramatasya bahubir parokshai hayanariha varam mahurtam viritam gatate shreyase yata. Shreyase, the highest perfection. Better moments. What is it says? Bhagavatam says, what is the value of a prolonged duration of life which is wasted in experience by years in this world? Better moments, full consciousness. Why? Because that gives one a start in searching after his ultimate shreyas, the prayas and shreyas. Getting a kingdom, getting advancement, and so on, and material wealth, that is as prayers. We're interested, people are captivated by immediate benefit. But the spiritual perspective is to see in a very broad way that yes, material things are there and they have to be utilized properly and enjoyed accordingly. But that's not the goal of life. The goal is paramgatim, the supreme abode, where there is no danger at every step, at any time. So it's amazing how we have to hear this. We have to hear it from this angle. We have to hear it from that angle. We have to hear it from this Shastra, from that Shastra. We don't belong here in this world. No matter how we try to fit the square peg into a round hole, it doesn't fit. So that is the actual message that Krishna is trying to give to us. You don't belong here in the material atmosphere. You don't belong in any of the 8,400,000 species, the different bodies. You don't belong there. You do belong in the kingdom of God, and it can be that huge ocean of material existence can be shrunk down to the water in the hoofprint of a calf. Bhagavatam says like that. It's insurmountable, it's overwhelming, it's all of these things. But by Krishna's mystic power, it can be reduced down to the amount of water in the hoofprint of a calf, and it's very easy to overcome that. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, difficult to overcome, but to surrender unto me can easily cross beyond it. Simple statement of Krishna. He makes so many simple statements. Yeah, again and again. abandon all types of different dharmic activities, all religious activities, and surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all sinful actions. Don't be afraid. And he goes on many, many, many times to try and come at us from one angle. And that's our business, is to hear these things. And one day, and we've had that experience many times, and we will continue to have them, and that is that it will penetrate. I was telling a story of that. Who was saying that? Who was saying that? Yeah, yeah. It was my wife was mentioning. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, that we in Bhagavad-gita, but Mahatma Prabhu was giving a lecture, and he was speaking on a subject matter, and he was saying that whenever we find any difficulty in our life, he said, you can trace it back to the quality of your chanting. So it was a very profound statement, and my wife was kind of moved by it, and she thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. So he went on to explain how that's the case, especially as for a devotee. If your quality of chanting is good, your chances are you're going to find that you're equipped to deal with whatever challenges are coming up all over in your life. And if your chanting is not very good, then you won't be doing so well in different areas. And I was speaking to a person online who was a little bit of coaching on relationships that my wife and I do. So I was speaking to this devotee, and he mentioned that he had somehow or other connected through the post that we'd put on our site, the Relationship Rescue Remedy site. He had come across this post of Mahatma's lecture that my wife had put up there. And what was amazing also was that there was a very few people had looked at this. Often there's, you get the number of views is either 100 or 500 or 1,000 people are viewing. And there was only 35 had viewed that post. And she was saying, this is amazing. It's only 30. I wonder why, because it was such a good lecture. And this person I was speaking to said, I had asked this person, how is your spiritual life going? Are you chanting? And how is that going for you? He said, no, I wasn't chanting very much at all. My chanting was very bad. But he said, recently I looked at that post, and by listening to it for the last 3 weeks, he said, I've been getting chanting seriously, and I'm feeling so much inspiration from that. So it was really an amazing thing. And it all relates to what I was saying. We can read the Bhagavad-gita, and then we can read it, and we can read it, and the third time, fourth time around, it will click. Something will click, and you go, wow, that is really relevant, really important. And the magic is if we keep reading it, and after you've read Bhagavad-gita, go and read something else, or put on a lecture of Srila Prabhupada, or a devotee that inspires you. Just keep hearing, putting ourselves in that, taking from Vaiseshika Prabhu, he says, whatever you do, place yourself in front of transcendental sound vibration. Just keep doing it because it will cut through. And when it couldn't penetrate yesterday, it will penetrate today. And tomorrow you'll get penetration in another way, which will give you these realizations. And when Krishna sees, this is all Bhagavatam, Krishna says that when he sees that intention and desire and activity in the heart of the devotee, he will reciprocate. All of them, Krishna says, as they surrender to me, I reward accordingly. So if we're trying to surrender to Krishna, if we're trying to bring out the good side within us and dissolve the not so good part of us, then Krishna will reciprocate, and he will say, oh, that's what you want to do. So, and he will reveal himself, and we will get fresh inspiration. So don't be cheated. I'm talking to me as well. I'm not just talking to whoever's listening. I'm talking to me too. Don't be cheated by Maya's tricks. Is I've read this, and therefore I what's the point in reading it again? We really sell ourselves short. Srila Prabhupada said we can read it constantly, again and again and again, in the association of devotees. Satam prasam gammam avirya samvido bhavanti ritkana rasayana kata. Ritkana, the rit, to hear, read in the heart and in the ear, karna, in the association of pure devotees. What is that verse going? The of pure discussions of the wonderful activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead are very pleasing and satisfying to the ear. That's pleasing to the ear to hear and satisfying to the heart. By the cultivation of this knowledge, one gradually advances on the path of liberation. Path of liberation means the anarthas, all the things that are holding us back. By this process, then we'll gradually advance to the point where we become fixed. It says, Bhagavatam says, then one's attraction will become fixed, and one's faith will become firm, and then Shraddhara to your bhakti anukramishati. Anukramishati means step by step. Shraddha. So that faith, that fixedness will become very fixed. Shraddha, ratir, and then there will be some very great pleasure and enjoyment and happiness in that fixed state of consciousness. And I've shared this before too. Again, Vaisheshika Prabhu, wonderful statements. He says, one day you'll be surprised. He said, one day you'll wake up and you'll say, where are these guys? Where are these guys? You guys are lust, anger, and greed, madness, illusion, and envy. You're always around. Where are you? It will feel conspicuous by their absence. And it may not, again, we'll see that happens in devotional service. That's how we're able to continue on the process. And then we may slip back. That is also described by the Goswamis, that the attraction is not fixed yet. So one might slide back. And then we think, oh, it's hopeless. I can't do it. No, Bhagavatam says, go on, continue the process. Don't be tricked by Maya. Don't be tricked. Maya has nothing to offer. Nothing. All Maya has to offer is old age, disease, death, and rebirth. That's what Maya has to offer. Don't be tricked to think that there's something else. And spiritual life has eternal, blissful existence to offer. Don't be tricked. That is available. And if we keep coming back to it, I'm just trying to remember that verse in the 11th canto, chapter 20, text 27 and 28. Having awakened attraction in the pastimes, hearing the pastimes of the Lord, knowing that all material, being dusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result. Krishna says this. He says, but not being able to renounce all sense enjoyment. What to do? Isn't that the position of the neophyte devotee? We're disgusted with the material world, yes, and we've got some attraction. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting listening. We'll get some attraction. And we know that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, but we don't have, what is that? Parityagep yanishvaraha. Parityagep means to surrender. Parityagep yanishvaraha. We may not have the full ability and strength to overcome the attraction to these things. So what to do? Krishna says, my devotee should remain happy and continue worshipping me with great faith and devotion. Even though sometimes he may or she may have difficulty and succumb to the desires for sense gratification in the material world, he should simply be regretful of that, but continue on, be happy and continue with the process. Kuntaya pratajani name bhakta pranashati. Declare it boldly, O Arjuna, my devotee never perishes. Quickly he will become righteous and attain lasting freedom from this material existence. So the Bhagavad-gita then is able to give that. Arjuna will get through his crisis. Again, we have many crises. It's the way of the world. The whole thing's a crisis. Whether you're whatever age and stage you're at, guess what? There's crises. And you go from one crisis to the next. The whole thing is a holiday, really. So Maya has nothing to offer. I bet intoxication is the only thing it's got to offer because it's too painful. And that's why intoxication is rampant. We're engaged in so much sinful life in the world, and people are suffering the reactions to that. So what happens? You have to take shelter of intoxication. And what happens due to that? More sinful activities and more suffering. So there's no shelter, that mode of nature. The passionate activities cannot bring the satisfaction. So that's the mode of passion, can't deliver what it promises. And the mode of ignorance says, give up this passionate activity and just chill out and take shelter of me, the mode of ignorance. Well, best of luck with that, because it ain't going to give you what you want. So that's no shelter either. Mode of goodness, it appears like poison. Oh, you got to get up early in the morning. You got to control your senses. You got to read these spiritual books. You got to do this and got to do that and follow these regulative principles of freedom. I didn't hear that. I just heard regulations, don't want them. They are regulative principles of freedom. So if we follow these principles of godly life, then lo and behold, our godly nature will become more and more manifest, and Maya can kind of move over and up the road somewhere else. There's plenty of other places for Maya Devi, and we can take shelter. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha vrata namashanta shamam bhakchani chitu upashate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls worship me with devotion. So that is the business. So we're not great souls, we're just little jiva souls, but we can become great when we serve the great and we associate with the great. And when we associate with the great literatures of Bhagavad-gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and all corollary literatures in support of the Vaishnava Siddhanta. So just finishing at this point, Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. So it was tough even for Arjuna, great warrior. We can hardly imagine the qualities of Arjuna. And even he was finding it difficult. So if you're finding it difficult at any time, don't worry, you're in company. You're in company, and do what Arjuna does. He surrenders to Krishna and says, please instruct me. Now I am your disciple. So I think we're going to finish there. What time is it? It is 9:55, so that is definitely time. I hope we've covered a few points that may give some inspiration to continue reading from Bhagavad-gita and hearing in the association of devotees. I wish you a wonderful day and look forward to hearing more Bhagavad-gita tomorrow. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Granth Raj, Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki Jai. Hare Krishna Prabhus.